will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Croydon Constitutionalist podcast, bringing classical liberalism to South London and beyond via YouTube, Stitcher and the Apple Podcasts. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swadling, the co-founder of the Croydon Constitutionalists. Welcome, Mike. What do we have to discuss today?
So hello Dan, hello everyone. We've got four main topics today, talking about the upcoming general election, talking about the recent Fairfield By-Election in Croydon, talking about DEMOC, the campaign for a directly elected mayor of Croydon, and finally talking about our upcoming event in the South Croydon Conservative Club on free speech.
Cheers, Mike. So, yes, we're going to get a general election at last. It's took its time to get here. We may have only made it about 50% the way through how long Parliament's supposed to last for under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, but we did eventually get there. So apparently there was sufficient numbers to get Boris's Brexit deal through, but they were going to stick loads of amendments on it. They weren't going to let it go through in a good time scale. So he's managed to get a general election. He's called Mr Corbyn's bluff, and Mr Corbyn has took it and is going for this general election. So we've got this general election coming up on the 12th of December. Mike, how do you think it's going to go?
It's a brave, rash man that makes predictions right now. I can only go by the polls, and the polls say a very healthy Conservative majority. Now, there's a gap. Both main parties, Conservative and Labour, have strengthened in their polls, but the gap between them stayed quite strong. So my sense is the Conservatives will get a reasonable majority. And the thing that happened last time with Theresa May, the Conservative manifesto was terrible. Theresa May didn't campaign, and Jeremy Corbyn was new and fresh, and people were tempted by that. None of those three things I believe to be true this time. So a prediction, a reasonable Conservative majority, but wouldn't be surprised if that was different.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting to see what is different from 2.5 years ago. At the time, Labour managed to take Brexit out of the equation. Theresa May was saying Brexit means Brexit, but, pretty much Labour said the same thing. Now they're offering this bizarre option of renegotiating something that's apparently better, but it doesn't sound like it will be to those of us who believe in Britain being an independent nation and being able to agree free trade deals with other countries around the world, and then putting that to the British people in yet another referendum whilst possibly campaigning against their own renegotiation. On the other hand, you have a resurgent Lib Dems, whether they're taking support from Labour, possibly a bit of support from the Conservatives as well, but they're polling a lot better than they were last time. And in some polls have been almost neck and neck with Labour. I think overall they're a few points behind. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. And of course, in amongst all of this, you have the Brexit Party as well. Apparently they're going to run 600 candidates, but there may be some places they don't stand. As far as I can see, in terms of the leading members or leading people, there's only Richard Tice who said where he's going to stand. He's going to stand in Hartlepool. Probably a good place to stand, I think, if you are going to stand for the Brexit Party. A big Leave area, and obviously a Labour area traditionally. So probably not taking too many votes away from the Conservatives or their chances of winning, I suspect. Nigel Farage has decided not to stand. An interesting decision there. But yeah, it's early days. Obviously, there's 30 odd days to go before this election, and with 30 days to go, in fact, in some polls I was looking at earlier, with some polls even with a week to go before the 2017 election, Theresa May had a healthy lead, but that was not the case. And of course, the polls are just percentages of people's voting intentions, but it's where those votes go that's the important thing, because we have a first past the post system. So there'll be some key battlegrounds, and of course the Lib Dems have tried to put together, I think it's about sort of 60 constituencies in England and Wales, a Remain alliance between them, the Greens and Plaid Cymru. I mean, what a rabble, seriously. And this alliance is already collapsing because there are Lib Dem candidates in certain places that just don't want to stand down. They'd rather actually stand as a Lib Dem and vice versa. So can't really see that coming off. I suspect it'll win amongst them a few more seats.
Yeah.
I think the Lib Dems probably will do better than they did in previous elections, both in terms of percentage of the vote and in terms of seats, because they'll concentrate on a few areas. They are undoubtedly going to win a few seats off the Conservatives. I think ones where there was a very small Conservative majority last time. I'm thinking places like Putney, in London, places like that, where the Lib Dems will pick up a few seats. But then again, the SNP are going after Jo Swinson's seat, which they took in 2015 and she got back in 2017. So hey, she may go. And indeed, there are people specifically going after Boris Johnson's seat. So you could get a Conservative majority, and even Boris loses his seat. That there is the possibility of that happening. But let's look a little bit closer to home as to what the election might mean here in Croydon. We've got the 3 seats: Croydon North, Croydon South, and Croydon Central. Croydon North, generally a very safe Labour seat, and I suspect that's going to be the case again this time. Croydon South, traditionally a very safe Conservative seat. Conservatives, good size majority in 2017, but reduced. Big Labour surge in Croydon South. Whether that will be maintained this time, I'm not sure. I think they may lose some of the people that voted for them to the Lib Dems this time.
Yeah.
And Croydon Central, though, is the key battleground. So if I just take you through some of the people who are standing so far that we know about, and then we can perhaps have a little chat about the potential here. So Croydon South, as I mentioned, it's generally a safe Conservative seat. Declared candidates so far, and we've got the best part of a week left before the actual nomination papers go in, so some of these things may change, and indeed there may be some further candidates that will get in before the deadline. But in Croydon South so far, we've got Chris Philp, the sitting MP for the Conservatives. We've got Anna Jones for the Lib Dems. We've got Peter Underwood for the Green Party. And we've got a chap called Peter Sonnex for the Brexit Party,
who we've interviewed.
Who we have indeed interviewed. Mike, what do you think is going to be going on in Croydon South? I noticed that the Labour Party are yet to declare a candidate.
So I think the Labour Party no doubt will impose a candidate from somewhere. It will be someone on their list, someone whose turn it is to have a go at a seat. I don't imagine it will make much difference. Chris Philp is a popular local MP. The Conservatives are obviously popular in the South generally. Peter Sonnex has been doing his best to get a campaign up and running, and we've interviewed him, and he's an impressive man from the Brexit Party. But I suspect this is a stretch too far. There's just not the groundswell of support in a very small C and large C Conservative area. It also did vote Remain Croydon South, so it's not. There's lots of Conservatives that will have voted Remain, will be quite content for us to leave, but aren't necessarily going to vote for a Brexit Party candidate. I think in that kind of area there. I ran against Peter Underwood twice. I won't share what I think of the man. And Anna has driven some publicity online. I don't mean that. I don't know what else they're doing. The Lib Dems have traditionally done quite well in Croydon South. I would think that would be a drag on the Labour vote, and may well see Chris Philp elected with an increased majority even though some of his vote rose to the Brexit Party.
Yeah, I think that's what could well happen, because certainly there are people that you sort of think would have voted Lib Dem last time, but didn't. They seem to vote for the Labour Party. Can't see that happening this time. People will see Corbyn for the far left person that he is. This is quite obvious from the policies that have been talked about so far. And I think for them, his ambiguity on the Brexit issue will not have gone down well. I think they will probably opt for the less radical in some ways Lib Dems, even if they are anti-Brexit, which makes them, anti-democrats in my opinion. But nonetheless, some people might see it a different way. As you say, Croydon South did vote Remain. So there could be some Brexit Party votes in there somewhere, but I think Chris Philp has probably got a very good chance of seeing retaining his seat with a decent, healthy majority. We shall touch on Croydon North, shall we? We may as well.
Yes.
In Croydon North, so far declared, we've got Claire Bonham for the Liberal Democrats, we've got Rachel Chance for the Greens, and we've got the incumbent Member of Parliament, Steve Reid, who is a Labour co-op candidate, interestingly. Steve's got a huge majority. I mean, in 2017 he got almost 75% of the votes. And he's
gainfully challenged, I think you'll find.
He was. There was a Spartan out there who got 1.3% of the votes. Bravely. But and interestingly, Steve Reid is somebody who I believe has signed some sort of pledge in the last few days, suggesting that he is going to campaign for Remain in any peculiar referendum that the Labour Party may see fit to give us should they come to power. So he's got 75% of the vote so far, and he's clearly not interested in democracy. It's what he thinks.
Steve does democracy when Steve wins. Steve doesn't do democracy when Steve doesn't win. It's a real shame for someone with a high level of capability to be that arrogant. Claire Bonham, I think, will take some votes. I suspect the Lib Dems will have a bit of resurgence in the area. She's run a couple of times for the Lib Dems, been focusing heavily on the sort of Crystal Palace Upper Norwood area. She's very capable, very friendly. I ran against her in South Norwood, and despite my general antipathy to the Lib Dems, on a personal basis, actually most of the people are pretty nice, I have to say, generally all round. But she is a capable candidate who I think will create some challenge. But you could bet a few bob on Steve winning Croydon North.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion. The far more interesting seat, the battleground swing seat, as far as Croydon is concerned, is Croydon Central. And the nominations so far, or the declared candidates, are Mario Critora for the Conservative Party. You've got the incumbent Member of Parliament, Sarah Jones, for the Labour Party. We've got Simon Spragg for the Lib Dems, and Esther Sutton for the Green Party. Esther's a well-known local environmentalist activist, so she's certainly got name recognition without a shadow of a doubt in the area, so she may get more votes than you might otherwise think a Green Party candidate would get. But this is going to be quite some contest. What's your gut feeling at the moment?
Do you know, I thought it was probably looking quite good for the Conservatives based on national polling. I think the Fairfield By-Election, which we'll come on to, has slightly dampened my view on that. We interviewed Mario for the Croydon Constitutionalists, and that was interesting. He's well known in the area, and he's clearly a very forceful campaigner. He's a local lad. Sarah is a local lass, and I think they will make it a very Croydon focused campaign. But there just is building up quite a strong Labour vote in Croydon Central. The metropolitan types that live in the centre of town now, the Zone 2 people, as I might describe them, that jump on the train to from East Croydon to London, are going to provide quite an obstacle. However, the Lib Dems are going to do well and take a lot of votes off Sarah. And depends what the Brexit Party do. Without a candidate, there is only one place for the Leave voting constituents of Croydon Central to vote, and that could be Mario's breakthrough moment.
It could indeed. As you say, there's no Brexit Party candidate put forward as yet, as we speak, and Croydon Central, as we know, did vote Leave. So in some ways, it's a little surprising to see that. And no UKIP candidate thus far, but obviously that may change over the following week. If we just look back at 2017 and the result there, I mean, it's interesting to see that the Lib Dems only got 1.9% of the vote.
Wow.
Now, I can't help but feel that they are going to do quite a bit better than that.
That is amazing. I hadn't realised it was that low. No, you're absolutely right. Simon Spragg, the Lib Dem, local man again, he is involved in various things in the community around there, from memory, I would say, from my memory, sorry, and he's got a very enthusiastic online campaign. And I only say that there may well be a ground campaign. I see the stuff online. I don't live in the area. They're going to do a lot better than that. I mean, it's hard to believe they get less than 10%. I'm tempted. I want to say 15, possibly. Yeah, 15. I'll go with 15. Hard to see them getting less than 15%. I can't believe they lost their deposit last time. So that's going to be a big change for Sarah. And lots of Croydon Central is the middle of the middle of the middle. Addiscombe, is one of those areas. I've lived a lot of my life there. It really is the middle of the middle. It's not too extreme in any which way, and famously Ashburton Ward voted exactly 50-50 split for Leave and Remain. It's hard to imagine a known Jeremy Corbyn getting a lot of votes in that area. And it's hard to imagine the Lib Dems not getting a lot of votes and taking them predominantly off of Labour.
Well, I mean, if just look at this, right? So from 2010, so 2015 was after the Lib Dems had been in coalition for 5 years. And they got absolutely smashed, as we know, in that election. Basically because those people were concerned because they'd obviously backtracked on tuition fees, etc., etc. They got punished for going into coalition with the Conservatives. But what I hadn't realised was that in 2010, they got 13.2% of the vote in Croydon Central. Wow. Now, they were way behind. You know, the Conservatives got 39.5 and Labour got 33.5. So they were way behind. They were nowhere near taking the seat. But if you look at that, you can easily see them, in the current circumstances, getting 10% or more. Now, if they do that, they could really, really eat into Sarah Jones's majority. As we say, Esther Sutton, very well known in the area, Green candidate. You can easily see some of those kind of eco-communists maybe going for the Green Party.
Esther will get a personal vote.
Yeah. I have no doubt whatsoever that she will. So you can see her getting, alright, last time we got 1.1%, but I can see her getting over 2%, 2.5%, something like that. So it's interesting to see that the Conservative vote may not go up very much at all. If at all, it may even go down a bit. But it's still possible that the resurgence of the Lib Dems and possibly the Greens in this constituency could have more of an impact on the Labour vote than it does actually on the Conservative vote. So yes, it'll be a very interesting battleground. Already had the Labour people round here today, so I'm sure they're going to be out in force. To be fair, despite the weather, but I don't think many people are going to be opening their doors to 5 or 6 hooded gentlemen just as nightfall comes. But pretty strange thing to do. But there you go.
That's going to be an interesting thing out of this election for everyone. You cannot do, realistically, very much daytime campaigning. Weekday campaigning. People are out, so you can knock up doors on during the week, of course. But lots of people will be out. There won't be many even campaigners around during the week. It's all going to be weekend focused because of an evening. The likelihood of people opening their doors has dramatically decreased. And if the weather's anything like it is today, as we're recording this, I want to put on a hood and a great big jacket even to go to the door, let alone out it. So it's going to be the local campaign is going to be less significant than it has been in previous elections. It's going to be much more significant what's going through the telly and social media, I suspect.
That's quite possibly true, and if so, I think that in terms of Croydon Central constituency, that probably benefits the Lib Dems because they don't have many ground troops. That's the truth.
Yes.
In comparison to either the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, because they are a much, much smaller party in Croydon with no councillors.
Yeah.
Very rarely have they had any councillors in Croydon. So they don't have that infrastructure where you can go knocking on doors, you can do proper canvassing, you can do all that sort of thing. So, but they will get the benefit, I suspect, of the greater publicity that the Lib Dems get because there is an election, and obviously you've got this sort of anti-Brexit. Well, it's their only. Do you know any other Lib Dem policies other than revoking Article 50?
No, I don't. I did retweet the Lib Dem candidate because he raised some interest in changing IR35 and not further enforcing it, which appears, although he really was just answering a question. I'm not sure how much he's looked into it, but that's a personal view of a candidate, and I retweeted it just because I thought it was quite amusing. There are other Lib Dem policies apparently. I'm not
They
aware
presumably will do a manifesto, but I am completely unaware of anything else that they are arguing for at all in this election.
The interesting thing with the Lib Dems is they've always traditionally been held together around we're not them and we're not them. We're not Labour, we're not Conservative, and around proportional representation. Well, proportional representation argument kind of went, and it kind of went when we had the referendum on a form of PR. People rejected it thoroughly, and that kind of ended the Lib Dems at that stage. Of course, right now, this is the Lib Dem party of a number of former Tories and a number of former Labour MPs who are prominent people. So they've got Stop Brexit as their manifesto. I would imagine it's pretty hard to build any other policies that everyone else agrees on. There is a existential threat to the Lib Dems here in the next election, or let's assume for a moment my prediction holds, the Conservatives win, they sign the withdrawal agreement, we leave, without getting into how much of a leave that really is. At some point, the general consensus is we are no longer in the EU and Brexit has happened. I don't know what the Lib Dems get together on anymore.
No, I mean, certainly in terms of the members of Parliament, they've expanded the number of members of Parliament they have through defections rather than... I think they won one by-election, but that's how they've done that. There's no saying that even if they get 18% of the vote nationally, that they're going to have more MPs than they did even as we speak. And they've gained MPs since the last election due to these defections. So, and of course, most of these defectors are not standing in the seats that they held for the Conservative or the Labour Party, because they knew that they wouldn't get back in. Like our good friends who were local MPs, the famous Chuka Amuna, and our pal from Surrey, Mr. Sam Giemer. who's decided to leg it to somewhere more central London, which is somewhere he probably knows, rather than East Surrey.
Yes.
But yeah, so and obviously we're going to talk about the Fairfield by-election, and there's some knock-on effects of that, potentially some information from that which may then feed into what happens in the general election. But in terms of the general election, we'll certainly update everybody when the nominations have closed and we know who the full list of candidates are.
Just one last thing on the general election, and having put the dig into the Lib Dems, we're both activists. We've done knocking on doors, we've done campaigning, we've stood for office, and I suspect many people listening to this podcast are in the same boat. I understand knocking on a door saying, I want to leave the EU. I understand knocking on a door saying, I want to stay in the EU. I don't understand knocking on a door and trying to convince people on the I want to do the hokey cokey around the EU. I don't fancy being a Labour activist who sales pitches, you know what's been going on for 3 years and how you're bored to tears of it. I've got a cunning plan to keep it going. Whatever you think of the Lib Dem plan, and I think it's pretty despicable, at least it's clear. Whether you think of the Conservative plan or the Brexit Party plan, they're clear. The plan from the Labour Party I suppose in a way it is clear. It's clearly muddled forever. Vote in this election, we can make you vote in 3 or 4 more coming up. Who's that selling to?
It's selling to nobody. What they're trying to do is to neuter the issue. Now they're able to do that last time by saying they would respect the decision of the people. We were less than 12 months after the referendum. They were prepared to, or at least Jeremy Corbyn was prepared to say that at that time. After all this time, this is your Brexit position. Unacceptable. So I don't think they'll be able to neuter the issue and then just talk about all the lovely things like the NHS and wouldn't it be nice if there are other economic policies. We're going to work towards everybody working a 4-day week but still getting full pay. Okay, and an immigration policy which is not an immigration policy, letting absolutely anybody who can get here is allowed to come here. They will immediately be entitled to benefits and a vote. I'm not quite sure, other than saying boo, the man in the blue rosette is a baddie and he's rich and and working on the politics simply of envy. I don't think any of their other policies are going to go down well with anybody, but some sort of raving self-loather or something like that. I don't know. Labour front bench is what it is. Which is perhaps where the Brexit Party can perhaps do some serious damage in some parts of the country. But we will see, yeah. But we have already had an election in Croydon recently.
Indeed.
Very, very locally, literally the town centre, with the Fairfield by-election, which took place just a few days ago. Interesting story as to how this came about. The local Labour councillor resigned in mysterious circumstances. Apparently it was a serious incident, but we've still not been told what it was. The Labour Party then had a bit of a selection scandal in which there was a selection meeting, a person was selected, and 24 hours later when the nomination papers went in, it wasn't their name that was on the nomination forms. Yes, peculiar situation. And then we had a 4-week campaign in which the Conservative candidate, Jade Edwards, had a huge amount of youthful helpers, knocking on doors, delivering leaflets, and did a pretty good social media campaign. I think she's only probably about 21, 22 herself, so she's very big in that area. However, notwithstanding that campaign, she was unsuccessful, and the Labour candidate won. Let's just go through the full list of the results. As they used to say when they used to do the football results, you said the classifieds, didn't they? the classified results. So the Conservative candidate Jade Edwards, she got 536 votes. Lib Dem candidate Andrew Rendell, he got 397 votes, and that may point to a certain direction we've been talking about. There was an independent candidate, Mark Samuel, who got 23. Then there was the successful candidate from the Labour Party, Cara Skipper, who got 849 votes. Esther Sutton, who we've already mentioned, who's going to be standing as the candidate for the constituency of Croydon Central in the upcoming general election, she got 237 votes for the Green Party. And then Heather Twiddle got 40 votes for the Women's Equality Party. What do you make of all that then, Mike?
Now, there's interesting. We've spoke before how there was a lot of credible candidates in this election. It's interesting how sort of a lot of the big guns came out. Interesting characters, lots of enthusiasm. It firstly, again, I'll make this point as someone that's done a lot of campaigning and indeed was campaigning on issue today. It doesn't really make a lot of difference, does it? The Conservatives had huge numbers of people out. Labour relatively had a lot less people out and yet won. Andrew Rendell is a credible former councillor, a sort of strong candidate. I don't think they've done a lot of campaigning, the Lib Dems, and I take this from social media. If someone knows differently, feel free to correct me on this. Contact us. But he got a good vote without, I don't think, doing very much. And Esther for the Greens got a good vote without really doing very much, although she is known. So, firstly, it pours scorn a little bit on local campaigning, which I think is a bit depressing in a way. But, yes, it's very Labour, Croydon Central now. I think you've got Zone 2 people living in Zone 5. There's this bubble around East Croydon Station and West Croydon Station that aren't really suburb people. They're metropolitan, they're city, they're anywhere people using the different phrases, and they happen to be based around the centre of Croydon because that is a very strong vote for the Labour Party and the Lib Dems, who didn't really go for it, and it's just kind of by the books on a very low turnout as well.
Yeah, turnout was 22.77%. Which is about 3/4 of what the turnout was at the last locals. So, but on that basis, I mean, the Labour vote really has gone down.
Yes, very much so.
You know, so I suspect. I think the Conservative vote there has stayed. I think the Conservatives have lost a little bit, but not much. Labour have lost a fair whack. And it's the Lib Dems, and to be fair, the Green Party as well did quite well, but the Lib Dem surge it is interesting, especially as you say. I mean, they did think they did with a couple of leaflets,
yes,
but certainly they just don't have the numbers, do they? So we know they don't have the numbers, but that's where maybe the national issues, and I'm pretty certain that it was the national issues that got the Lib Dems that sort of a vote in the area especially in the area that we're talking about here. The ward itself used to be a bigger ward, and included some very leafy parts of the area who traditionally voted Conservative. So once it was shrunk as part of a boundary review, basically because there's going to be lots of people living here because they're building so many flats. And obviously pushes things in a certain direction, and that's why Labour won all three councillors in the locals, the all-out locals last year. But yeah, it is interesting if that points towards what might happen in Croydon Central. I think the Labour Party should be concerned because this is a Labour ward at the moment, Fairfield.
Yes, indeed.
Whereas a lot of the other wards in Croydon Central are Conservative wards. So if they're losing votes in the Labour wards, Sarah Jones could be in for some trouble, I think.
Very anecdotal thing, and not pertains more to the general election than perhaps Fairfield. People I know who are natural Labour voters are voting Lib Dem in quite large numbers. I've not, in my sort of day-to-day life, I don't know a lot of people that are planning to vote Labour in this election, for a variety of reasons, but it typically comes down to the Jeremy Corbyn factor, and that's driving them towards the Lib Dems. And you know, that Fairfield result sort of bears out an awful lot of people that made that switch. I just wonder if that's something we're going to see a little bit more of over the next few weeks.
Well, that's right. Yes, obviously the Lib Dems have the bollocks to Brexit slogan, and certainly the revoking Article 50. I say in their favour. It's a strong message that will appeal to some people, but obviously there are people who perhaps feel they can't vote Conservative, but do not want to vote for a Jeremy Corbyn-led Labour Party, whatever the Brexit position is. It's just that they are clearly so left-wing that they can't bring themselves to vote for them. That said, you know, we've seen examples in the last few days of people who've been Labour MPs. I think there was a couple of Labour MPs, Ian Austin and I think the chap's name's Woodcock, who got together and said that they've both become independents in the last year or so because they resigned from the Labour Party because of Corbyn. And they've both said that, notwithstanding the previous allegiances to the Labour Party, they've advised people to vote Conservative because they are that concerned about a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn. And I think that may be playing out here, where there are some people who just can't bring themselves to vote for a Labour Party led by him and with his comrades on that in that shadow cabinet.
No, that is exactly it. There's a different sense about Jeremy Corbyn this time. I was out knocking on doors today, and somebody told me they didn't trust Boris, and then they told me they do trust Corbyn, and that's what terrifies them. And I thought that summed it up pretty well.
That's an interesting way to look at things. It's funny on the Fairfield result itself. There's an excellent summary of the results and an explanation of the ward itself and the impact it might have on the Croydon Central constituency election coming up. It's on the On London website, and what we'll do is we'll put a link in the description so you can go and have a look at that yourself. I read it and thought, blimey, that is a very, very good summary of you know, some of the things we've been talking about. And to be fair, I don't know, it came out, you know, by lunchtime the day after the result. So it was pretty good, yeah. Okay then, that's probably enough about Fairfield for now. Mike, Democratically Elected Mayor for Croydon campaign. Can you just give us a brief update on what's going on with that at the moment?
Absolutely. So just once again to remind everyone, the current model of electing a leader of Croydon Council is the winning party elects a leader of their party, and that person becomes the leader of the council. That person then goes to appoint almost the majority of the councillors that elected them to posts that come with extra funds. It's not necessarily the most transparent system in the world. We are campaigning to change that to have a democratically elected mayor, it's called. And that's a democratically elected leader of the council who's elected by all of the people of Croydon. It would replace the current Croydon council leader. So it's a fairly cost-neutral move, the idea being that you just replace one with another. And you keep your ceremonial mayor. So Mayor Kabir goes round in chain and opens fates, and I say that because he's been at one of my schools and done that. And all the mayors do that. I've seen various mayors and mayoresses over the years do that. They do a fantastic job. That ceremonial mayor stays in place. So today we're out in Purley. We keep doing street stalls and door knocks. We're going to keep that going into the new year. We're slightly on a ramp down because of the general election, and obviously lots of people involved in this are involved in the election. We've got to collect 15,000 signatures. We're up at about 2,500. We had a very good day in Purley. And the thing that's changed suddenly is people came to see us. They came to see us to go, oh yes, I want to sign your petition. Some people even came with signed forms that they downloaded from the website and got from their neighbours. There's a momentum building. There's a sense that we need to change the council. We need some people in the council that actually listen to the people of Croydon. And this is the only show in town to do that. So yes, we've been out a few times and you knock on a door or you see someone and you have to explain the whole concept. Today, people had heard of us, and that's a really significant step forward.
Very interesting. And if people do want to get involved, what's the website?
Go to Google DEMOC, and it's democ.org, and I'm just going to check that because I can't quite remember, shamefully. We have a Democratically Elected Mayor of Croydon Facebook page. Or if you contact me through the Croydon Constitutionalists website, and it's democ.org.uk. You can download a petition there. We need physical signed petitions. This is a bit like voting. You need physically to sign something. Or democ.org.uk, and you can register and get in touch with us.
Great stuff. So finally today, we'll have a little chat about an upcoming Croydon Constitutionalist event that we've got. It's a freedom of speech event called My Tuppenceworth. It's taking place at the South Croydon Conservative Club on Tuesday the 19th of November with a 7 o'clock meet for a 7:30pm start. Mike, what's it all about and what's going to be the format for the evening?
So the idea of the evening is that you get a chance to have your input and talk about a thing that matters to you. It's supporting free speech. It's supporting the idea that you can say the things you want. Now, of course, the laws of libel still apply, but if there's an issue that's burning to you, a chance to have a talk to us for a number of people. Up to 3 minutes, a talk, and then a few minutes for Q&A, and it slightly depends on how many people want to talk and what we do. There may even be an opportunity for a second go-round on different issues. The idea is you talk to those assembled, they can ask some questions, you get to put your view across, you get to hone your arguments, and you get to hear things that are different and new, stuff you wouldn't normally hear, and what a refreshing change that is. Do it in person. It's at the South Croydon Conservative Club. It's a non-partisan event, so all are welcome, and there's cheap beer.
Excellent. Well, I can certainly say that I'll be attending in light of all of that. So before I go, if you have any stories about Croydon Council, and obviously there's some issues there, or you just want to get in contact with us, that would be absolutely great. You can get us on Twitter at Croydon Const. You can go to our Facebook page, or you can go to our website, which is croydonconstitutionalists.uk, or you can email us at croydonconstitutionalists@gmail.com.
I particularly encourage anyone who wants to be interviewed or would like to write for our site, 500 words, more if you want to do that. What's the burning issues for you? What's the things you want to say in Croydon? Things on politics more generally. Write for our website. We'd love to publish you. It'd be great to get a bit of a community hub and an opportunity for people to put stories out there.
Definitely, the more the merrier. So coming up over the next few weeks, we'll have we'll get some more updates on the election, how it's going, who the candidates are when we have the full list. We'll obviously got our free speech event that we've just mentioned coming up, and do please get in touch with us. But until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Goodbye.